and we'll yeah. Okay.
Good day, everyone. Part two. I had a slight interruption, so I bring in back myself and Javier for part two. Again, this is new for me. This is my fourth time now. Episode number 4.
I'm freaking honored. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
Awesome, man.
So there's going to be some glitches in this. I want you guys just to keep that in mind when you start out new. Nothing is ever perfect, right? There's going to be some glitches. So,
And if you try to make it perfect, you're never going to do anything.
yeah, exactly. You got to make mistakes, right? Fail forward. So continuing on from where Javier was talking off. Go ahead.
Okay, short story. I'm at a bar, a small town in Ontario. I was with a whole bunch of other friends where there was a strong kind of group of us. There was about 30 of us at the bar. I can dance, so I'm dancing with some pretty ladies. Some guys don't really like that, and I'm able to just notice what's happening. I can feel the vibes. I can feel the hateful glares and stuff like that, but I can just ignore it. As the night goes on, I'm sure they have more drinks. Everybody's getting a little bit drunker. And so they start to escalate a little bit. So one guy comes and pours his drink down my back. Oh. So I just, nothing, just like it was on my back. So the person I was dancing with was in front. She didn't even notice. Just keep dancing. And then finally one of them pushes, he didn't even have the guts to just, one of them has to push their friend into me. So they kind of do the bump, and I turn around and it's like, hey, and I'm just like, hi. I just turn around, just keep dancing. And there's just nothing, I just didn't, it's so hard for people. They're looking for the escalation, right? There's very few people who are just going to turn around and just sock you in the face out of nowhere. They need that, they need the chest bumping. They need this, whatever escalation. And that's where, I knew from Aikido that it wasn't worth it. 2, I was afraid of getting hurt, of course, and it's in a bar fight. There's bottles. God knows what the hell can happen. But I've also been training a lot. Like, I have some pretty mean knees and elbows and stuff. And like, do I want to put someone in the hospital? Like, do I over this stupid thing, like break an orbital bone or break some ribs? Like, no. Yeah. Do you want to deal with the cops afterwards? Do you want to deal with any of this? Absolutely not. So, and of course, I then look over and I see that one of my good friends, who was a very large man, saw what was happening. And so if I would have gone even just a little bit, like if I would have given a little something, it would have escalated so quickly. My buddies would have been coming in. God knows where, if they had more buddies in the back of the bar. So, just absolutely refusing to enter into that contest is something that Aikido taught me early, and I think it's something that they do such a good job of instilling in all the training sessions, right? Just even their mentality, they're all based on there's almost no offensive motion in Aikido, right? It's all about taking in the energy, redirecting it, and doing what you want to do with it. Again, very difficult it takes so much training to really be able to apply some of their skill sets. So I'm not necessarily advocating Aikido as a real martial art, but it is been, I think, the most important, one of the most important ones for me to have as a base for everything else that I've done.
Cool. And then tying into that, so what would you say, and I mean, you've obviously went through several martial arts. What did you like about each of them that creates your own, kind of like Bruce Lee talks about, your own Jeet Kune Do? Like, which of them, when you're talking about bringing them all together, what about each of them, adds to the other?
Fantastic question. And I answer that. And one thing that I love about MMA is it's so much is about the stance. Okay. Right? There's all these different stances, and they all have their advantages and disadvantages. So what I love is being able to, by switching my stance, I can switch the mentality that I'm in. So boxers are just the best punchers, right? I don't think anyone can argue with that. So if I'm going to throw punches, I want to be in as much of a boxing stance as I can be. Now, of course, if you're in a boxing stance, you're wider. That lead leg is open for leg kicks and takedowns from good wrestlers, right? So I can now be aware. It's like, oh, okay, if I'm not worried about these other things, I'm just going to be in a boxing stance most of the time. But if I'm in a real situation and a street, I don't want to throw punches. I find they're very, very ineffective. It's so easy to break your hand. I would never throw in a punch in a real fight. I would be going almost straight clinch and tie. And at that point, I want my hips super close. I'm going to be in a tie stance. I'm not going to be worried super much about a takedown. I'm going to be worried about knees, elbows, headbutts, the real bread and butter of what Jeet Kune Do teaches in terms of how to actually deal with a street fight. So being able to shift between these stances kind of allows you to switch between the mentalities that go along with the approach, right? If I'm going to be in a boxing stance, it's way easier to do a lot more head movement because you have that wider base. And, so that might work real well in a certain situation. While the Thai stance, if someone all of a sudden someone goes like this for you, you probably want to do this too, because you want to be, this is up here to protect against the elbows, and if someone really knows how to throw elbows, you want to be able to deal with that. So yeah, I think that almost every martial art has something unique to offer. And because everyone's body is so different, not only are our bodies so different, but what we want out of martial arts is so different, that I don't think there's ever one martial art for anyone. And I think that they all can really help us. They can help individuals find what it is that they're looking for. I mean, it's one of the things that I try to do here is offer as many different styles and approaches as possible, and try to match it up with their natural physique. So one of my good friends, Liam, he played a lot of basketball. So as soon as I started teaching him boxing, he just naturally stood really, really square, because that's, I think, just apparently more what you need to do for to defend against basketball. So immediately I'm just like, Philly shell. That is a beautiful. He just naturally has this beautiful Philly shell. So we've been training a bunch of the Philly shell, mostly on one side. When he switches stances, we do something a little bit on the other side. Even that, the idea of switching stances is something that I'm kind of obsessed with. I love being able to fight on both sides, and generally doing things differently on both sides. Don't try to be the same. Don't try to do everything the same. Your body's naturally going to want to do different things. I have a better straight on my left than I do on my right side. So things like that.
Cool. And then talk to me about Wing Chun, because you said you've done that before, and I know that's like, I've done it myself, and I find that the students.
That's one of your main bases, right? That's your.
Yeah, one of my main bases is Wing Chun, and I find a lot of people that do Wing Chun, they're like, oh, it's never going to work. It's not practical. I was wondering if you can tell. Now I know there's some practicality, but I wanted, and obviously you believe in that too. Can you explain, what it is about Wing Chun that you find benefit for you, and how can you use that street application? How does that benefit you?
Again, one thing I love that there's like the Thais, they stand perfectly square. So it means you can use both your hands equally. A lot of the reason for people to stand sideways for a lot of more traditional stuff, there's a lot of power there, but I think a lot of it does have to do with point fighting and some of that other stuff. So having a square stance, I think, is one of the more optimal things. Being the frames that you build when you're doing this kind of stuff, like, I don't do a lot of actual trapping hand work, but when I'm sparring, and if I'm doing this a ton, right? This frame, the structure, even if I'm going to my wrestling, I teach a little bit of Wing Chun. If someone's got your collar tie, you want to be able to swim inside and use your frame in here to get that off. Which is the way I do this. Every time I think of doing this, I think of being a kid. Like, this is part of what you do here. So it's unbelievably fast, which is fantastic. It is not really concerned with trying to generate too much power. It's many strikes. The double chung choi, the crashing down on someone, still I think is one of the most effective things you can do to someone. In a situation, especially on the street, if you don't have a lot of space, if you do have a lot of space, it can be very, very useful. The one thing that I will maybe the actual trapping, like sometimes actually getting some of these positions, I feel that's where sometimes it's not as practical, or it just takes, again, it is practical, but you have to. There's such a high level of training you have to get to before you can really apply this in a real martial situation. But I think one of the best things that you get out of it as well is the sensitivity training, right? I think it's such a good, like, I've used that work, just some of this more subtle, sensitive work in every other martial art that I've done. Like, I think that's one of the reasons that when I got to wrestling, I was pretty decent at it, because I was able to go hit that energy and just move. Like, I was used to being able to flow with things. And I think it's one of the absolute best for that. And it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, cool. Now, in each of those arts, how many years did you spend on each one?
So Wing Chun, about 3 years, Aikido 1 year, Thai about 9 years, JKD about 2.5 years. And then since I've been, MMA has been about 10 years now, 15 years almost, yeah.
So how many years total again? I'm just trying to do the math in my head.
I don't know. So about, I don't know, 34 years or something like that.
34 years.
I mean, intermittently. Okay, it's not that I train. I've worked in restaurants, so I have struggled at times to train really consistently in my life. But I've never given up, which is one thing that I might say to people. Like, if life happens. It's really difficult. I've never been someone who's just really been able to train for like 2 years consecutively. So I've always wanted to, but I've just never been. I haven't had the discipline, and I haven't been able to just make my life, organize my life well enough to make that happen. But one of my advantages, I think, is because I just keep coming back and I keep coming back. And every time I would come back, I'd always come back to a beginner class and work my way back up. Right. So I'd go beginner, intermediate, kind of fall off for a bit, beginner, intermediate, and I would go through the cycle over and over again. So coming back to the base roots of the fundamentals to martial arts, depending, regardless of what style I was doing, I think has really kind of helped me over the long run, where I am obsessed with just doing things well.
Excellent, cool. So with martial arts, for the number of years you've been doing it for, so for 34 years, how many in those 34 years where you've had to use your martial arts knowledge? How many situations where you've had to use it practically?
Like in a physical
Yeah,
sense,
physical sense.
I would say 10 to 12.
10 to 12?
10 to 12
Okay.
between just some kind of random, just getting jumped on the street a couple years ago, or having to break up some fights at a bar, that kind of thing. Yeah,
Okay.
10 to 12,
And then, so the ones in the bar, was that most of the 10 to 12, would you say?
about half,
About half.
about
Okay.
half.
So really, six of those were outside of a bar scenario, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So six situations in 34 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the reason I'm highlighting that is because when you look at that, six situations, now those situations, could have saved your life for those people around you. Now I'm not negating that, and I look at that, I'm like, okay. Now, obviously, martial arts has played a bigger role for you other than physical situations. So, can you share a little bit more about how martial arts has helped you in other areas of your life?
I think I very well might be dead in a ditch without it. I'll be honest, man. Like
Okay.
it's I was so I got into rehab at 25, and I was struggling with addiction, pretty much since 21, 22. And martial arts has been, aside from healthy relationships, the most stabilizing thing in my life. It was something that I could invest in, something that would keep me away from doing other things. It was something that made me feel good about myself. It was something. It was like it was the counter to everything. So if I was trying to smoke less weed, you would go and train your ass off, and you didn't want to smoke, right? It was the so one of the most difficult things that I've heard in my travels throughout addiction is that when you really start dealing with it, so much of your life is wrapped up in it that people don't often know what else to do. Right? It's like it's such an integral part of everything, especially in restaurants. It was part of literally where I worked, where everything. So to have an island, to have this space where I was in a different setting, I was around a different type of people who had different focuses, and there was that sense of community. And I've been doing it a long time, so I'm pretty good. So something that I could do well. It's I just honestly have no idea who or where I would be without it. Yeah.
That's amazing. So it helped you on the addiction side, and then what about like in through your relationships? How's it?
Sure. So much of what we do in martial arts is train ourselves to train our negative, our intrinsic reactions. So if for me, when it comes to grappling, everything that I would learn, I had to learn the opposite. So as soon as I got put in a guillotine, I want to drive in instead of pull out, right? So you're kind of training, one of the easiest way to describe it is that, you get hit in the face, and without martial arts, you kind of do this. And then with martial arts, you kind of do this. You're fine. You're kind of just used to dealing with, putting aside your initial reactions. And I think in relationships, that has been so critical for me, where, my wife may do or say something, and the ability, so I get this feeling, it's just like, oh, it's destabilizing in some way, was she just a little bit harsher? Is she not going to follow through with something that I was hoping she was going to? And then just being able to take that step back and go, okay, hold on a second. Like, let's just take a breath. What is actually are my fears realized? Is this something that I really need to worry about? And then be able to, and it's almost never is, take a breath and be able to come from a much more present, much more less reactionary thing. It really has helped me be less reactionary as a person, and I think we all need to be good at something. I think we all need something that we can really enjoy, that we can invest into. And martial arts has made me a more attractive person to my partner, and it's something that I can focus on and do to help me be a better partner. Right? I want to be the best husband I can be, and I know that a good, healthy training regimen is going to help me do that.
Right. And in what ways has she communicated to you about you doing martial arts has drawn her to you?
Um, calmer, calmer and less reactive. I'm not going to say for anybody else, but I know for my wife in particular, being steady and calm is just such a critical thing for me. And frankly, I haven't always been. So really being able to, she's definitely let me know that the calmer, the less, again, the less reactive and the steadier I am, which means like martial arts just helps me be more peaceful, right? It helps me tick these boxes that I want to tick on a daily basis. And so by being a more just happier, complete person, I can just be a better partner for her.
Excellent. How long have you guys been married for?
We just celebrated, we just actually went away for our 4th year anniversary.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank
Well
you very
done.
much. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Now, big thing. So this is Quest for Freedom Talk. So
Yeah.
I want to find out from you, how has martial arts brought you more freedom in your life, and in what ways?
Well, a lot. To say the freedom from addiction definitely has been one of the biggest things for sure. I mean, it wasn't obviously just martial arts. There's a lot of therapy. There's a lot of other stuff that I went to dealing with that. But the freedom to not be scared. Right, I was a really small kid. I had my growth spurt quite late in life, so most of my friends were all just bigger than me, and it's been this kind of secret weapon, right? Where sure, like even my friends would be a little bigger, but then I'd kind of do some weird stuff that they didn't think I could do or something like that. So it's